And welcome back to the table, everyone. So glad to have you back. It's been a while. I wanted to give you a video here. Overview, review. There's the Effing Scheer. Yep, that's a very grab your attention name for a game. War game rules for World War II naval combat. So for those that don't want to watch the whole video, because I do stream of consciousness, thoughts just come and go, I'm going to say it's a good set of rules. It is, I can see where like it's taking, you can't quote me, but it almost feels like a streamlined General Quarters 3. And that's good. So this is actually a really good set of rules. If you want to get into, World War II naval combat, this is a great place to start. If you have the time and the patience to learn something like Command at Sea, Sea Krieg, go for it. Those are great, for getting into like, 2 or 3 ships a person kind of a thing. And there was a video on YouTube you can find about Sea Krieg someone plays through. It's a very narrative game, and you're really focused on the damage that happens to your ships as you play. Like, I mean, it gets in there and it says, like Boiler Room 1, and it loses power, and so your rear aft turret doesn't work, and it has like some pretty cool details, but there's work to get there, a lot of charts and things. This, not that at all, but it is. I would think that if people are coming into naval gaming through, say, the Warlord Games Victory at Sea rule set, this is much better than that. If you want something that plays a little more simulation-y and not so gamey, I've heard people say that I felt like the Victory at Sea is kind of like playing World of Warships. It's got warships, but it definitely has kind of a game feel. This, I mean, is a game, but it really feels like a streamlined General Quarters 3. So I really enjoy it. So I want to go over my experience with it. Now, all I've played so far, because I don't have a large ship collection, which is a nice thing about World War II naval combat. If you play Atlantic, Pacific Theater, you're going to need some ships. Lots of ships there. But if you do North Atlantic, you can get away a little bit with like a few British and a few German ships. Now, if you do like convoy runs, you'll need lots of destroyers and things like that. But there's a couple big battles you could do. There's you could do the River Plate or Plot. Someone said it was Plot, not Plate. Okay, cool. River Plot. That's, Graf Spee, and then you have like the Exeter, Achilles, and Ajax. Then you have Battle of Denmark Strait, which is the Bismarck and Prince Eugen. I hope it's pronounced Prince Eugen, versus, say, the Prince of Wales and the Hood. And then you could do, I forget the name of it, it's not, but it has like the Scheer, a couple famous things like that. You can get away with fewer ships to play. And this set of rules, I think, is good even for small, but I can see how this set of rules would be great for much larger battles, where a friend of mine, we're playing out a game, and he's using General Quarters 3 as the backbone of it, but there's like 20 British ships, and if we were to, it's a campaign system, hard to explain, but if I put 20 ships out on the table to do a tactical battle, where I'm bringing in like a handful of Italian ships, it'd be a lot. It'd be a lot. General Quarters 3, again, maybe not as complex as Command at Sea as some people, it's all subject to opinion, right? But General Quarters 3 is up there in some of the charts and rolling and things you have to look up. But here, this is great. You could easily play a larger scale game and get fairly realistic results. And the small game, I felt, played out really, really good. Spoiler alert, the Germans still lost. I have yet to play a game where the Germans have won with the Eugen and the Bismarck. They just get overwhelmed with the firepower of the Prince of Wales and the Hood. Now, to be fair, there is a scenario in here. I didn't play the scenario necessarily. I just played a full running Prince of Wales, and they actually had a rule in there, which I'd have to go back and reread, where one of the turrets on the Prince of Wales was having problems. So you don't quite get all the firepower of the Prince of Wales, because yeah, it's it's got You Feel the Firepower of the Prince of Wales. Good ship. Alright, so anyway, how does all this work? Well, first I gathered up some things I'm used to having. I like to have these markers. I have had these for a while now. I got a couple different size splash markers. I use the bigger ones for like larger caliber stuff. If primary guns, you know, even if it's a 6-inch, you know, you probably get away with a smaller splash. But if I'm firing like secondaries and things like that, I'll put the smaller splash. These are for like main guns. And it is important for a rule set like this because it does have a penalty for having different size shells shoot at a target. That because traditionally, you know, if you've got several ships shooting, they see all these splashes and then they start to wonder, well, were those our splashes or their splashes? And then if you've got different caliber weapons all shooting, anyway, different size splashes, couple fire markers, various things to help track stuff. I didn't use them today, but I did at one point buy some torpedo markers. And for a game like this, I don't know, I might need more, but there is a spot here where I could write on the tail of the torpedo some of the information I need for this game. You know, so I have those. You're also going to need a tape measurer with centimeters. Now, I don't know about you, but where I live, just walking into Walmart, the tape measures don't have the centimeters or metric on them. So I had to go to, we got a place like Harbor Freight or something like that, more of a construction-y type of place to get one with centimeters, but get one with centimeters. I do have a laser line, you know, just to help if things are in arc. I have ultra-fine dry erase markers because I printed out the ship sheets and put them under a sleeve. I'll show you here, but that way I can mark damage. I have a bunch of die 12, probably about 10. 10 D12 would be good. I brought with me 8. I could only find 8 die 12, but if you got 10, that'd be good because this, I know some people don't like this, but it works out. It works fine in this game. You are firing per barrel, so if you shoot 10 barrels at something, you're going to roll 10 dice. I know some people don't like that, but like General Quarters 3, it's like every 2 barrels you roll a die. Yeah, which is okay, but then if you have a turret that only has 3, you're losing out on a barrel, and then, you know, some games they do comparative, so you're shooting, you might be rolling a percentile, then based on how many barrels, your percentile, your cross-reference. This, I'm okay with this. It's not really that bad for an amount of dice. So if you have 10, because Prince of Wales has 10 barrels, and if it's shooting. So anyway, have some D12, and then a couple of D6, because there is at least one chart in there where you roll D6 to determine something. So that's just a few things you got. And then your ships, right? Now the ships can honestly be anything. Topside minis I think are great if you're just getting into naval gaming. You know, miniatures are always cool to have. Give a great visual treat. But if you just want something to show you where things are located, then I would say try like topside minis. You print them out, cut them out, glue them onto some thick cardboard or something, and then you've got these nice flats of ships, and you can get like 1/3000 scale, 1/2400 scale. So that's what you got. You got some basic tools there. Now, the book, we'll take a look here at the book. Contents, it's 75 pages, but as you can see from about page 40 down, it's all scenarios pretty much. There is the Battle of River Plate and then Denmark Strait. You know, and then there's some stuff there that's in the South Pacific. And what's interesting is there's not a section specifically of ship data cards. The ship data cards are built into the scenario. So if you play Battle of River Plate, it's got 4 ship cards. So 2 for the Germans, 2 for the British. And then the rules themselves are about like 1 page per topic, maybe 2 or 3 pages per topic in some spots. But overall, it's a quick read. This is probably one of the better set of reading rules that I've gotten. Oh, and full disclosure, I didn't put this out. This is a review copy that was sent to me, so thank you, Rich. This is definitely worth your time to get and your money. It's like maybe $13 to $15 on Wargame Vault. I guess depends on where you shop from. but so it's not terribly expensive, but it's a really good set of rules. Now, I did play on a 6x4 table, which was nice because he's got 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter is 200 meters, and it worked out pretty good. I think even at max, like starting at far ends of the table, we could shoot at each other. It was extreme range, and then your weapon ranges will, fall within that somewhere. So playing on a 6x4 table is probably fine. I think the author, he says he plays with 1/3000, and so that might even look more realistic. The 1/2400 on a 6x4 table at this scale seems fine. Let's see here. Yeah, movement. There's 6-minute turns. So your speed in knots he's got it down to 1 centimeter is 1 knot. So if you could move 36 knots, that's 36 centimeters. But what he did is he cut those speeds in half just so people aren't just zipping around the table. It works fine. It works fine. Because on one hand, and I like how Rich puts in a lot of good notes, like his design philosophy. Just because ships could go 36 knots, realistically, that's probably burning a lot of fuel, and typically they probably would not be going full speed all the time. So half speed, it seems like a good compromise to the realism that they're not trying to burn all their fuel as fast as they can going top speed. So speeds are about half. So, a lot of the ships here in the Battle of Denmark Strait were doing about 15 centimeters a turn. And it looks fine on the table. And it kind of goes to that idea of they're going combat speed. I'm okay with that. He says you can, if you want, go full speeds. But just be prepared that ships are zipping around. It might be realistic, but in no time you're right next to each other. So half is what he has it at. What else we got here? The data cards I'll show you. How to mark damage is easy. I'll pull out the data cards I have from the Denmark Strait battle I did. The only thing I wish I did, and I did not do, is I didn't write down how many turns it took. I wish I kind of taken better notes on how long it took me to play the game. It wasn't super long. I took my time, made sure every time I shot I went some splash markers, made sure I put little... Oh, that's the other thing, the puffs of smoke, which I don't have near me. I got some teddy bear filling, stuffed animal filling that I use. So I'd make sure I'd put down some puffs of smoke for when the ships fired and everything. So if you just went hardcore playing the game, it plays quick, but yeah, it's not too fast and it's not super slow. It's really nice. The torpedo markers, yeah. Those are just some things about the game here. He's got his intro. Okay, got it. Ship types from destroyers to battle cruisers, big battleships. Now, these base rules don't cover aircraft and they don't have carriers. In here there's hinted at there will be more. Also, the time frame covers from the early war to 1943. So I would say if this set does well, I think he would be encouraged to put out more rules, and that would be great. I would love to have aircraft. I would love to see how he does aircraft, because he said that would almost be like a side game. A lot of aircraft ops would be handled kind of in a meta game, maybe not necessarily tactically on the table. I'd like to see how he does it. Right now, my friend, we're using the campaign rules, or I'm not sure where he got the campaign rules, but he's using General Quarters 3 for the air-to-air combat and stuff, and seems to work okay. But I like to see how other people do things, so I'd like to see how he does aerial combat, so that will probably come later. Here's an example of a ship data form here. I don't think I can zoom in too much unless I rotate and then blow it up here for you. So that's a ship data card. It's nice. It does remind me of a very compact General Quarters 3 kind of ship data card. So you've got the type of ship. It's the Northampton class heavy cruiser. The Northampton specifically, its armor value, air defense value, which isn't needed until you add aircraft later. Damage control, what you need to roll on a die 12 or higher to put out a critical hit. It's got your gun types. And it's not super detailed on gunnery, but I mean it does include the primary guns. If you had torpedoes, I'd have to look at all the ships, but I haven't seen a ship that's got primary, secondary, and torps. Pretty much it's either primaries and torps or primaries and secondaries. But I haven't examined every single ship card here in the rules. Mostly I was focused on getting the one so I could do Denmark straight. But it'll have the gun caliber, the range in centimeters, their firepower value, you know, how likely to do damage it is, the arcs. So the number there is 3 barrels. The turret is the A and B turret. So he uses like the I think it's British. So they have like A, B turrets, XY turrets in the back, and turrets like in between, PQs, things like that are like the center line turrets. So you've got you know, 2 turrets up front with 3 barrels each, and then a turret in the back with 3 barrels. And typically, if it's the front turrets, their firing arcs are like port, front, and starboard over here. And the back is like the same, except it's out the aft. And then secondary guns, port, starboard, so pretty much they're just firing left and right. Rapid fire, so there are some weapon characteristics that could affect the game, so you could look those up. Then you have a line here for critical hits. You got 2 boxes for fire control. First hit is -1 to your hit rolls. Second box means fire control is out completely, and they're under local gunnery, so it's a -2 to hit. Steering means you can't maneuver until you fix it. You got 2 power. Power, you're going at half speed, and then finally the second power is your no speed at all. Your engines are dead. Bulkheads are for flooding, and then fires. Now all of these are, you just kind of put a line through it to indicate that it's been hit, but fires they check off as tally marks. So you could actually have several fires going, and that would be bad. But that's the basics about a data card. So simple, but you know, it works well. And as you can see, it's not the type of game where you have a ship with like 1,240 hit points and then all the guns are hitting for like 100 points of damage and stuff like that. This again kind of goes more towards like the general quarters style, where the weapons, depending on your dice roll, might do 1 point of damage or 2 points of damage, and you'll see how damage works as we progress along. So I like it. To me, it's a good fit. It feels good. It feels good. Then the way the game plays, which I think what we'll do, there might be a little shiny, but I have here the quick reference sheet. The quick reference sheet has everything you need to play except for spreading fire damage. That's it sucks, but it's not that bad. Yeah, that's not too much glare. So the way the game works is initiative. Initiative is easy. Each person who's playing is going to roll a die 12. Highest roll wins. There can be some modifiers for captain quality and things like that. But typically, you just roll some die 12 and highest roll wins. Then comes the movement. Initiative player moves first. Now, some people might not like that. I think some people prefer that the initiative player moves last, so they can react to what the loser had to do. You know, play it how you will, I suppose. It's your rule set after that point, but this is, you know, roll that person moves. Moving is easy. Now, I'm actually okay with it because you're just, again, you're measuring in centimeters. If you want to turn your ship, you have to move a minimum of 3 centimeters. After you've done that, you can turn up to 90 degrees and then move the rest of your movement. Cool. And every time you want to move in between, you just got to move the 3 centimeters so that you're overcoming the inertia of moving through the water, and then you're okay. So does that make every ship as nimble as other ships? Yeah, it's fine. I thought there was something, I can't remember details, but maybe there was something that no, maybe not. I think everybody is just as nimble. But it simplifies things. It's fine. I'm okay with that. I know some people probably would like, you know, different characteristics for, you know, battleships versus destroyers versus, you know, cruisers. But it works when you play the game. It's fine. But then you have formations. So like if you're doing in a line, anytime you're doing any kind of formation, it's fine. You just move like the lead ship and then everybody falls into formation around it. again, the idea is to keep it focused on maneuvering and gunnery, not necessarily the minutia of, because I've played that before, where you got a protractor every ship and you're struggling more to keep them in a formation than you're just saying, hey, these guys are in the formation and here's what they're doing. So I like the simplicity of movement. But anyway, you move. After movement comes torpedoes. Torpedoes that have already been deployed will now travel and make an attack. Torpedoes are kind of cool. I like that in his notes, kind of narrative explaining torpedoes, he talks about how wildly inaccurate they are, but when they hit, they're devastating. And sometimes it only feels like they're a super weapon because of how many would be launched. He had an example where in one particular battle, like 96 torpedoes were launched and like none of them hit. But then later on, there was like a Dutch cruiser that got hit by like one torpedo and it bust in half. So yeah, in here, I like the fact that he's got there's the quintuple launchers and a quadruple launcher for the torpedoes, and those offer modifiers to hit. But the thing is, out of a spread, only one torpedo hits. So you have like a huge modifier which really increases the odds of hitting, but only one torpedo is going to hit. There is an optional rule that if you fire, like, say, the 5 torpedoes, then you have to roll to see if a torpedo hits, then you roll again, and there's a penalty for that. And if that torpedo hits, you roll again, but then the penalty is doubled. So it starts out with like you make your roll to hit, and let's say the first torpedo hits. Then the second torpedo, you make the roll to hit again, but you subtract 2. There's like a 2 penalty. But if that one hits, then you roll again, but then there's a 4 penalty. So it gradually increases that penalty to hit. So you could potentially hit with just 1 torpedo, maybe 2, up to 3, maybe all 5 hit if you roll really, really well. But I'm okay with his reasoning of 1 torpedo out of a spread hits, because they are pretty devastating. Because when it hits, it does its damage, and then it does like an extra die 6 of flooding damage. So torpedoes can be quite devastating. So there's a torpedo phase. Then there's a shooting phase. Shooting phase is fantastic. It's easy. So everything about the system is pretty simple. Well, torpedoes, I didn't really talk about how torpedoes work. Torpedoes, there's later in the phase, there's a torpedoes launch phase. So I didn't want to over-explain everything, but I thought I would share this out. I wanted to try it today, but my cruiser, Eugen, got pretty much toasted before it could really launch torps. But you're going to put your torpedo down next to your ship, and that would be in the torpedo launched phase. Alright, that's step E. Then you do the end phase. Then you go back to initiative, movement phase. Ships all move. You leave the torpedo marker there because it's already been launched from your ship. Then you check. They have a range of like 10 centimeters. I forget what it is, but let's say it's 10 centimeters off the top of my head, right? So, I can go out to 10 centimeters. And any ship that's within like a 90-degree arc of that launch becomes a potential target. So as long as it's within arc and within 10 centimeters, it'll drive out and attempt to attack that target. Now, he abstracted torpedoes because in some games, yes, you can try to plot targets and estimate where targets might be, intercept and protractors and things. And he said, I tell you what, look, just you're going to fire within this area. If there's a ship within the area, when the torpedo gets to do its activation, you get to make an attack on the ship. So if there's 2 targets, you pick one that you want, because he said that most people, when they're plotting torpedoes, are probably going for like the big ships anyway. So if you have a couple, just say, okay, this ship happens to be in the arc and the range. I go out to make an attack, make my attack rolls. If it fails, it can potentially attack another ship in the area. And if there's a friendly ship in the area, gotta be careful because they could potentially hit the friendly. Now, if it goes out and hits nothing, because maybe your target you wanted was actually a little bit further out, the torpedo, after it makes that maximum range, if there's nothing there, it automatically moves again. But to track it, it gets what's called, you just put a second torpedo on it. So essentially the torpedoes have 2 movement phases. So if you just stack it then you know that that torpedo is on its second move phase. Calculate for combat and whatever, and when you realize at the end, okay, that was its second move phase, I'll pull it off. There's actually rules for Japanese long lance torpedoes. They get a little more life out of them, but that's the gist of torpedoes. It's not hard, but it's fine. It works. You know, again, people might think that's a little abstracted, but in play, it's actually not that bad. And by limiting torpedo hits to 1, because you might say, well, that's pretty powerful, but you limit it to 1. So there's some balance in there. So, you know, I thought that's good. Then the shooting is just as easy. So you're going to take the ships, and what I like about shooting is it's simultaneous. So you don't have to worry about initiative as far as that. Initiative is really only played out in movement. That actually could be eliminated completely if people did pre-plotted movement, which is not a part of the game. But if you do pre-plotted movement and write your moves down, then even movement could be simultaneous. You have to outguess your opponent. But here, it's easy enough. Pick a target. See if they got smoke. That's important because they could... Oh yeah, in the movement phase you could drop smoke. Forgot about that. There's chemical smoke, funnel smoke. But you're going to look at your target, see if you can see the target. There's you can, if you have multiple targets, you could have some of your turrets fire like one target, turret fire at another. There's penalties for splitting the fire. You know, so it does take that into account if you want to do that. Then you're going to check the range. Now there's short range, medium, long, very long, extreme. The 150 centimeters, that's around the 72 inches. So on a nice full size 6x4 table, you can shoot clear across, but not every weapon shoots that far. So you would have to look at your data sheet, see how far out. The one thing I wrote to Rich about was, according to this, there's no gunnery penalties for a 5-inch or like a 5.9 secondary gun shooting out as far as, say, like an 18-inch Yamato gun. If it can, you can shoot out here. I mean, you're only limited by the range of the weapon. You know, so if a Yamato shooting out to 90 centimeters has the exact same chance to hit as, say, a secondary gun shooting out to 90 centimeters, if it can actually shoot that far. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, a Yamato would be more accurate shooting at 90 centimeters because that's well within its distance of shooting. Whereas that is now hitting the extreme range of a smaller secondary weapon. I would think that that would be less accurate. And when I emailed Rich, he said, you're right. But just for simplicity and to help the game play, just use this one singular chart. Cool. And then based on range, this number here, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's what you need to roll to hit. Apply modifiers down here. There's not many modifiers. So determining what you need to roll is easy. And even though you're rolling, like in the case of the Prince of Wales, 10 die 10, scoring a 12 sometimes to hit, it's not that easy. So as you get closer, it does tend to get a little bit easier. There's an 11, you know, but if you apply a penalty like funnel smoke, or once you, this is what I like to do. Once a ship fires, I'll put, a splash marker, or once it fires, like so if the Bismarck shot here, then I know that any other ship shooting here has a penalty. Because whose splashes are you looking at, kind of a thing. So I already know that there's a penalty for anybody else shooting at that ship, right? And if you shot secondaries at it. So that's what I do for that. So not many penalties to worry about. It does have penalties like if you have large caliber guns shooting at destroyers. There are a couple rules, like a battleship can shoot over a cruiser. It might not seem like it, but the rules do allow for that. But if you had a battleship and a battleship kind of side by side, the larger ship can't shoot through same size or bigger. So it can shoot over smaller size ships. So again, not much that you need to worry about gunnery as far as needing to hit. Very simple, but I like it. It's fun. It's quick. I like it because it's quick. You just, how many guns do I have shooting? Okay, here's the range. I need 11s. Do any of these, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6 potential modifiers. Okay, cool. I know I'm hitting on 11s. Let me roll 6, let's see, 6 dice. Let's say for whatever reason, I've only got 6 dice. Lots of misses. So even though you're rolling a lot of dice doesn't mean you're going to get a lot of hits. Sometimes you're lucky and do. But as some of his notes were saying, some engagements, they could fire hundreds of shells and there was like a 3% accuracy in some cases, but the average battleship had a 2% chance of hitting. So they're firing tons of shells, but very few are actually scoring noticeable damage, strikes. So then that's the shooting phase. Then there's the launch torpedo phase. So you're just like, okay, I'm dropping torpedoes. You make a note on the torpedo marker, like an A, and then on your sheet of paper you could say torpedo spread A is a quintuple launcher. That way when you go to do the damage on the torps, it's very similar to the gunnery. You got to track your modifiers, roll your die 12, and if it hits, because it says it hits on a modified 9 or higher, so my notes have to indicate that torpedo spread A was a quintuple launcher. I might even have to mark down like how many I launched. Maybe I launched 2 sets of 5 going out, so I'm going to make like 2 attack rolls, modify it by my modifiers for like how many torpedoes, the target aspect, size of the target, am I shooting from the aft, or if the long run, if it's on that second phase of movement, there's a penalty. So once you've determined a hit and you got to determine damage, we flip the sheet. Here's the weapon damage. So whether it's torpedoes or gunnery, there's a damage chart. So based on, basically you take the difference between the weapon damage and the armor of the vessel, roll a die 12, add that difference number, and that will tell you how many hull hits you did. Torpedoes, if they score a 12, that's a natural crit, a natural 12 when they're rolling for damage. Because after you hit, basically if I had 1 hit out of my 6 dice, I would then roll 1 die, take that 6, add it to the difference between the attack and the armor value, get a total number, and that's how many hull damage. But again, if I roll a 12 with a torpedo, that's an automatic critical damage. If it's gunnery and you roll a 12 and the difference is 5 or more between your shot damage and your armor value, so like if my bonus to add to the damage was like 9 and I rolled a 12, that would be 9 and 12 is 21, so that'd be 2 hull damage and then 1 critical hit. Another thing that's nice too is if you roll a natural 1, it starts a fire, and potentially, depending on the difference between your firepower and the armor, you might score a hull damage, but if nothing else, you might just start a fire on something. What I do like though is if you have penalties to damage, enough penalties to your damage roll, that you would have negative modifiers in some way, you always still get to roll the die 12, you just add 0. So there's a chance that you could hit with something like a light caliber gun against armor, heavy armor, and score 0 damage or maybe just 1. So I like that. Now, here's what I did for me, talking about range, is instead of using range as a modifier to the hit score, I use range as a modifier to the damage, and it's real easy. So I'm saying to myself, okay, great, if that 5-inch secondary gun is shooting out to the 90 centimeters, it's not going to have as much punch because there's going to be a certain amount of penetration that's lost over distance. So what I did was, there's no loss of penetration at short range. You lose 1 at medium, 2 at long, 3 at very long, 4 at extreme. Most secondaries aren't shooting out to extreme, they probably aren't getting very long. But at extreme range, even the Yamato is going to lose 4 to its firepower, but it has like, I don't know what the Yamato has, but like Prince of Wales is 22 firepower, so it still has an 18 firepower when comparing that against any ship's armor at extreme range. So if I'm firing clear across the table and hit, cool, but there's just a little bit of penalty. That's a rule I made, and I tell you what, it worked great. That meant the little pea shooters, secondary guns could hit something, but if you're at the extreme range of that, the limits of that gun, it doesn't hit as hard. But a big gun, the modifier makes a little bit of difference, but not enough that it's like overwhelmingly penalizing. It worked out great. It worked out great. I loved it. That's a house rule I'm going to keep and use. So that's kind of the game in a nutshell. I know I explained that really fast, but trust me, it plays great. So here's what the battle looks like. Now, here, oh, I just grabbed the British. Yeah, I think the Prince Eugen scored a couple hits on the Prince of Wales because I didn't want to have the hit penalties for having, you know, splashes and whatnot. I was like, well, I don't want that -1 to hit, so we'll, you know, Bismarck will shoot at Hood, Eugen with its smaller guns will shoot at the Prince of Wales, and yeah, the armor stopped easily Eugen shells at range. But here's an example. If I'm shooting, you know, I look at my range chart, and I know I have to hit on 10s, so I roll my dice, and look, I got an 11. Hey, lucky me. So out of all those shots, I know that there was one hit. So what I do is I take the firepower of the weapon that hit, subtract the armor, so in this case 22 minus 10. But if you're playing with my optional rule, and let's say based on like long range is -2 to the damage, then it'd be firepower 20, subtract 8, so that's a difference of 12. So that means when I go to check damage, I'm going to roll my dice, I add 12. So 7 and 12 is 19. I look at my damage chart. 19 does 2 whole damage. Easy. If I had rolled a 1, then I would have taken that 1 plus, what I say, 12. So I would have had 13, which would be 1 whole damage, but a 1 also starts a fire. So I'd put a little tally mark for a fire. Again, easy. If I had rolled a 12, it would have been 12 plus 12, 24, but because that difference in firepower of my modified 20 and the 8 is like a 12, that was higher than the 5 you need, that would have been a roll on the critical hit table as well. So I could have rolled, critical hit table needs 2 dice 6, so I would have rolled my, where's my other one? Just could have rolled that and said, okay, a 3, it's a fire control damaged, oh no. But, you know, again, easy. But it moves along really well, and it gives you a chance at some flavor. You know, you're not just simply knocking out 100, 200 points of damage. It's, you know, if you multiplied 1 by 100, then you could say, yeah, I'm doing in the hundreds, but this works out great. Now, when you're marking damage, I got it in my sheet protector, and let's say I did 2 damage, I marked 2 boxes, boop, and that's it. Now, at the end of the turn, when it gets to the end phase, you do damage control. And there's not much here. Damage assessment, basically, this just simply means the damage occurred this turn. Damage applies at the end of the turn. That's what allows for simultaneous shooting. It's easy to track. Even if I scored a crit, and let's say I hit steering, I put that. And if I got a fire, I just mark that. Now, when that end phase comes, I just put an X, indicates that that location is now damaged. Steering is now damaged. The damage effects happen now, and fire stays. Then I have a decision. If I had fired my weapons, I could make 1 attempt to fix something. So I could try to fix the fire or steering. If you don't shoot in a turn, you can make 2 repair rolls. So you have a damage control number. Go for the fires first. I roll. Fire's out. Steering is out. I can repair that. Try to repair that on the next turn. Easy. But it still gives you some flavor, right? You're taking on a little bit of damage, and you took a critical hit to your steering. You put the fire out. Now the nice thing about fire is, if you try to put a fire out, and you fail the roll, the fire does not do extra damage because you have teams actively fighting the fire, keeping it from spreading. But if you fail that damage roll and the fire spreads, inside the rules there's a chart for fire damage that's uncontained, and that's what I wish was on here. So I wish the quick reference also included the additional fire damage, so I don't have to keep flipping into the rule book. So if that was on here, this would be, you could easily perfectly play the whole game from just the quick reference sheets. But here, this is, I should show you what happened to the Eugen. So a little bit happened here to the hood. Nothing happened to the Prince of Wales at all. But over time, I did get one fire on the hood. They were able to put it out finally, but it did spend one turn where they failed a damage control roll. So no additional damage happened, the fire didn't spread, but if I had accumulated more damage, they would have to start making decisions. Okay, what's more important? You always want to put the fire out first. If a torpedo hits, then the torpedo damage, why that's bad is it has flooding. So when a torpedo hits, you might get your 1 or 2 points of hull damage, but then you roll an additional die 6 for flooding. There's nothing in the rules for draining flooding. You're just stuck with the flooding boxes, which is why bulkhead is bad, because if you don't fix a bulkhead, if you fail to fix a bulkhead, you take an additional box of water. So flooding is very bad for a ship, and I guess on this scale of the metric tons of water you're taking on, you can't just pump it out with, you know, a hand pump. So flooding and water and fires, bad. You have 2 fire control boxes, so if you lose both boxes, you are firing with -2. Steering, you can't turn until it's fixed. I think I already mentioned that, right? If you lose both powers, then your ship can't move. Bulkheads, floods, and then fires. Alright, so let's take a look at what happened with the German stuff. Yeah, they got wrecked. So the Eugen down here only has an armor of 5. So even shooting at extreme range, if it got hit and you subtracted, say, 4 points of damage for the loss of penetration over range, 22 minus 4 is 18. 18 minus 5 is 13. So even at extreme ranges, if the Eugen got hit, every damage roll, you're adding a 13 to it and comparing it to that, you know, fancy dancy hull damage chart. So the Eugen was just getting ripped to pieces, which one would expect. Huge battleship guns versus, you know, lightly armored cruisers. So it took hits. Like, it was, I had it withdraw. When you withdraw, I put a little W here indicating you're withdrawing. The ship fires up funnel smoke, and if it's 50 centimeters away from the enemy, under power, steering is good, and you got the smoke running, you can disappear. So the Eugen slipped away, got away, but it did take some damage here to one of the torpedo tubes. Now, this was something that came up that I made a call on, and I hope it's right. So eventually the Bismarck then became the target of the Hood and the Prince of Wales, but it withstood quite a bit of firepower. So its armor is 10. So even if at range, 18, subtract 10, you're only adding 8 to the roll, it still hurts, but not as bad as the poor Eugen got tore up. Luckily, there were some pretty bad rolls for the British, so the Bismarck actually was able to navigate and steer between a lot of the splashes and came out pretty good, but not good enough that he wanted to stay in the fight. Now, he passed the morale check. Once you hit half of your hull boxes, there is a morale check to see if they want to stay in the fight. Yeah, my Bismarck did. It's just that in terms of realism, once I hit these lower speed boxes, that was one other thing that kind of threw me off on the speed. I'll tell you that in a second. But once I got down to my minimum speed, I was like, yeah, it's time to pull out. We've taken enough hull damage and water on and whatnot that we're getting out of here. The ship could still fight, but it was doing terrible. I did have 2 fires. I put over here just a reminder. So at one point, I did get 2 fires. And so I had that situation where I was able to put 1 fire out, but then I took fire damage, and the fire damage destroyed a battery. Now, in the rules, this is the only thing where I kind of just made a decision. It said that if you hit a turret, the turret was out. So I could randomly roll, and let's say I took out a turret, those barrels are gone, no problem. But it said you could also damage a battery. But as you can see here, with secondaries, in my mind, a battery was like one of those secondary guns. So when I was rolling, I think I just rolled a die 6 and went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was like, okay, so I hit secondaries. Well, I don't think that would cross out all of the secondaries. It would cross out 1. So like 1 secondary was hit. So I just said, okay, I'll just do it that way. The turret loss I can understand because the barrels are in the turret. And if the turret is hit bad enough that it's, destroyed, if you will, those barrels aren't shooting in there. There's too much mechanical damage. But the secondary guns are spread out along the side of the ship. So if I take out 1 secondary, it's fine. So I was interpreting battery to be like the individual guns of the secondaries. I could be wrong, but that's how I went, and it made sense. So they did lose one of the secondary guns from fire, and then the rest of the damage was hull damage and internal mechanical damage, which caused it to drop speed, take on water, and they bugged out as well. Yeah, so speed was the only thing. Let me pull back this guy. And I think I'm running it fine. But when you start out, your speed is this top speed. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, that number should be here. So you're basically 14, 14, 14, 14, 14, 14, 14. And at that point, I'm now going speed 11. Because once that box is destroyed, then you're on the next speed number. So I think in my mind, I would have liked it to have been like 14. Then that would have said 11. Then the next one down would have said 9. That would have been 7. And maybe that could have been like a 5 or something. So just kind of keep in mind that it's actually going to be 14s until that's dead. Then it's 11s. Then it's 9. And then 7. So once you hit this last box, you're dead. So that's in my mind why all of these are 7. I mean, that's the minimum speed this can do, and then it's dead. I don't know. It's just in my mind, I'm thinking backwards. The number should have been... Anyway, it works. But that's the game in a nutshell, 50 minutes later. Wow. Yeah, I'm not good. I'm nowhere near good at doing those 15-minute quick strike reviews. So I'm just going to let you know. Great rule set. Plays great. Has just enough crunch to make you feel like it's a naval simulation-y, but plays really quick so that you can actually get a large game in. Battle of Denmark Strait, like I said, it probably took a couple hours, but mostly it's because it was me, and I had to walk around the table for everything I did, and then after I fired, I'd take my little puffs of smoke and lay them out there. I tried to make it cinematic looking, so I'd put my puffs of smoke and put my little markers for fire and whatnot. Made it cinematic experience, took some drinks here and there. But it was great playing. Super easy to learn, but I think it really does strike a good balance between realism and gaming. So I would highly recommend this rule set for anybody who is looking to maybe promote themselves up from, say, Victory at Sea by Warlord Games. You could use those minis for this game too. I don't think you'd have a problem. The centimeters and the table scale to terrain scale already for the Victory, I've played it, I have it. Their scaling is already kind of wonky with things. So if you just left this game exactly as it is, I think you could play those ship models just fine with this rule set. So you don't have to buy new stuff. But if you are looking for, to move up in complexity. Now, if you're used to playing the complex games, but you want something that kind of has that feel, but plays fairly quick, so you could play larger battles, then this would be it. Because I've seen people in forums and things are discussing how to simplify general quarters to play larger battles, you know, half hull boxes, or, you know, different things to kind of speed that play up. This is it. This is the game. If you want that general quarters feel, but you want that quicker play to do larger battles, this is it. Anyway, that's all I got. Whew, 50 some minutes into it. It's going to take me a while to get this edited and posted, but if you watch this whole thing, thanks a lot. I hope this tells you about the game. Remember, it's on Wargame Vault. What's it called again? There's the Effing Scheer. Like I said, 15 bucks maybe, but it'll be some of the best 15 bucks you've spent on a PDF from Wargame Vault. All right, everybody, thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the next video.